guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I am here with my first part of my April wrap up. I think I have 6 books to talk about with you today, so I'm going to go straight on into it and talk about one of the books I read at the very start of the month, which is one I flew through, which is no surprise because it is a Karin Slaughter book, and this is Faithless by Karin Slaughter. This is the pre-ultimate book in her Grant County series, which follows County Coroner Sarah and Chief Police Jeffrey as they kind of team up together. They're like a husband-wife duo and they team up together to solve all these type of grisly murders and crimes taking place in their county, of which there are a lot, and I have to say it's not a place I would like to live because there's a lot of terrible crimes that happens in this area. In this book, Sarah and Jeffrey, at the very start of the book, they are out on a walk and they end up tripping over something on the ground and they find this kind of like piece of pipe sticking out of the ground, and it just doesn't feel right to them, so they start digging and they end up finding this box in the ground, and inside this box is a dead girl who has apparently been left in this box to literally like suffocate to death. So this ends up obviously with a murder investigation. This is actually mostly Jeffrey's point of view. Kind of have in the past books they've kind of been split probably a little bit more evenly, sometimes a little bit more maybe with Sarah, but this book I feel like predominantly you follow Jeffrey, and I actually really enjoyed that for a change, kind of a change of scenery I guess, in a way, where Sarah took a little bit of a backseat and we saw a little bit more Jeffrey and his feelings and emotions through a case that was a little bit tough for him. And the case brings him to this farm where this girl grew up on this farm. She's the daughter of the people who own the farm, and there's something about the farm that just doesn't seem right, and he can't figure out if it's just the general feeling of the farm, there's like a little bit of like a cult-like feeling to it, or if it's the people who run the farm themselves. Is there something going on with the people who run the farm? So this was I enjoyed this book a lot. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really easy to read. I was hooked into it as I'm hooked into all of Karin Slaughter's books. Again, a lot of trigger warnings around, particularly in this book, around domestic abuse. This one, I guess, I think you're really gearing up to the last book in the series, so this is very much kind of like a filler book. It's kind of just a little bit of a stepping stone onto what's going to be the big finish for the end of the series, so I'm looking forward to reading what's going to be the last book in the series. Another book I read this month was a book that actually really disappointed me. It was one I got from NetGalley, Skyward by Aliya Whiteley, and this is a sci-fi book that has been compared a lot to Becky Chambers, to her Wayfarer series, and it's kind of very much like this gentle sci-fi book that if you like the Wayfarer series, you'll like this book, and I actually quite disagree with that. This is about, you first start following this person called Jem, who seems to run this inn called the Skyward Inn with this other creature. They don't seem to be human, and they seem to be some sort of alien creature, and Jem has this kind of I'm blanking on the alien creature's name right now, but she seems to have this kind of almost romantic relationship with this person, yet they've never actually like done anything. They have never really touched or like kissed or anything like that, but they definitely have like love feelings for each other that seem to be romantic. And then also a little bit like on this where she lives, which is actually on the coast of Devon, so you are actually on Earth, you are not in this like other planet. Her son lives with her brother, and her son seem to have this very kind of bad relationship. She doesn't seem to be around for her son a lot of her son's life because she went off to do these kind of like an army, like she kind of joined the army but in like a space exploration sense of the word. She missed a lot of her son's life, so that they're very estranged from each other, and you're kind of just finding out about like their lives, and you're following the son as well, as he kind of explores more around his uncle's farm, and these strangers come and are like living in this other farm, and he's kind of getting to know them. And then also there seems to be this kind of almost like a sickness creeping up on top of these people, and they don't know about it, and there's just like this weird feeling that something bad is going to happen. That's kind of all that happens. It's very strange, and it's one that I just didn't get along with. I didn't click with the story, I didn't click with the characters. I felt a little bit confused for a lot of it. This book is actually quite short, it's under 200 pages, and I felt like it was much longer. When I wasn't reading this book, I didn't want to pick it up, and I think that's probably one of like the worst things you can feel when you're reading a book, that you just don't want to read it. I actually the writing in this reminded me a little bit of Emma Newman's writing. She wrote Planetfall and After Atlas, and the writing in it reminded me actually a little bit of the writing in her books. Compare Skyward to her writing, and if you like Emma Newman, I say you might like Skyward but for me it was just a massive fail. I just didn't really like it. I can't really understand myself why exactly I didn't like it. It's just one of those books that just didn't click with me. I didn't get with the story, and yeah, it was just 2 out of 5 stars for me, and yeah, it was disappointing because I was hoping I would really love it. The next 3 books for me were rereads, and they actually were something that is something I don't do a lot, which is mood reading. And I decided that I was going to mood read at the start of April, and I picked up the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy. So that's To All the Boys I've Loved Before, P.S. I Still Love You, and Always and Forever, Lara Jean. And these are like, this is a trilogy that I really love, and I haven't actually reread them since I originally read the first 2 books like 5 or 6 years ago. So I had actually finished the last movie on Netflix, and it just kind of got me in the mood that I like, you know, love Peter Kay so much. He's like one of my favourite book boyfriends, and I just wanted to read about him because I think book Peter is so much better than movie Peter, and I just wanted to remind myself of all those like lovely feelings between Lara Jean and Peter. And yeah, I just wanted something really nice and really sweet and really easy to read, and something that would make me smile and make me feel happy, and that's exactly what these did. And then I finished an audiobook that I was listening to, and that was Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. And this was narrated by Exie Sands, who is an absolutely excellent narrator. I cannot recommend her enough. I've listened to something else by her before, which was Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk, and she was really good in that one too. And this one she also nailed. This is quite a long audiobook, it's about 19 hours long, I think. And it's quite a chunky book because it's like a story within a story within a story. And you're finding out about these girls who went to this school in the early 1900s, Clara and Flo. The 2 of them were in a relationship, and then they ended up being found dead in this school's orchard. They were killed by yellow jacket wasps, and I can't tell you how many times I go to say tracker jackers instead of yellow jackets. Then we are following, like almost like over 100 years later, we are following a movie being made about this school and these girls, and this kind of almost curse on this school that people think, because more girls died after Clara and Flo, and there's this kind of weird history around this school, and particularly this book that all these girls seem to read, the movie that's been made of this story. And we're following the 2 main actresses in this story, who are Harper and Audrey, this girl around the same age as them who actually wrote a non-fiction book about the school, and her name is Merit. And we are following this relationship between these 3 girls, and then finding out more about what happened all those years ago in the 1900s between Clara and Flo, and what was actually going on in the school. It was a real slow burn. It's a very slow book. It's a real like builder of a book, but I still felt kind of quite hooked on each like part of the story. I really liked both of them. I liked the past as equally as I like the present, which doesn't always happen with me. Sometimes I generally like one side of the story better, where for this one I felt equally immersed in both of them. There's definitely like this creepy feeling to like this, it's kind of like part horror, part supernatural, paranormal in this book. It actually reminded me a little bit of like the Diviners by Libba Bray, that kind of creepy feeling. And you have these girls who are just like living their lives, being a little bit glamorous, being a little bit daring. I really liked Exie Sands' narration, because she has this like type of narration in her voice where she kind of, it's like she's always telling you something that she knows and you don't know. She's not like telling you a story for the first time. She's like, it's a very like a knowing voice, and there's almost like a little bit of mischief in her voice, where she's like, I know something you don't know, and I'll get there, but first I'm going to tell you all of this. And I just really loved that. It was definitely like a really nice way of consuming the story through her narration of the book. This book is super duper gay as well, which is just like really nice to see, and it kind of almost has a borderline poly relationship in it between Audrey, Harper and Merit. We see the 3 of them kind of orbit around each other in a way that's a little bit romantic, slightly sexual, but like there's just this chemistry between the 3 of them that's like more than friendship. The very end of the book was a little bit, I don't know whether it was like anticlimactic, but like it wasn't like a big, I didn't get like a big bang or a big wow moment with this book, which is why it's actually a 3 out of 5 stars for me. It's a good book and I did enjoy it. It just didn't give me any wow factors, but there were lots of elements of this book that I did really enjoy, and I would actually recommend people to read, because I think people might like it slightly better than I did, but I still did enjoy the book. I just didn't absolutely love it. The next book I read was actually the first book in a fantasy series. This was The Gift by Alison and Croggon, and this is the first book in the Pelennor series, which is a YA high fantasy series that I'd actually never heard about before. And then I saw Kirsty over Kirsty's Reviews. She did a vlog where she read all of the books in the series, and the way she described these books just made me want to read them. I knew it was a book series that I really wanted to read. So this is the first book, and this is definitely more of like a world builder book. It's a real, it's showing you the world. It reminded me a lot of like Tolkien's writing, like Middle Earth, and it also reminded me a lot of the Shannara Chronicles by Terry Brooks, which is actually not a series that I like, but there are elements of the world building and how like the journeys went in this book, in the gift, that reminded me of Shannara in like a good way. So in this book we follow a girl called Myrad, who is a slave, and she has been in slavery almost her entire life from the time she's very young, and all she can remember is that her and her mother were captured, and her mother died then in captivity, and ever since then she has been this slave. And then one day she finds this man in the barn, in this place that she lives in, and she's not actually supposed to see him because he is a bard, which means that he is magic, and the reason that she can see him is because she also has magic as well. And this man like recognizes the magic in her. He recognizes that she actually has a lot of like powerful magic that has been untapped, that is like just inside of her. She's untrained, and he knows that he has to get her out, that she shouldn't stay here, that he needs to figure out like who she is, where she came from, can she be trained. And he basically like, they kind of rescue each other. He doesn't really rescue her, they kind of rescue each other, and then they go back like on this journey back to like the bard schools, just, you know, like real like typical YA fantasy. Like there's a lot of cliches here that like you'd see in a lot of other books, but I just really liked how this was done. It's kind of almost like a gentle fantasy in a way. There were some action scenes and some bits with like dark creatures and kind of almost like fight scenes and stuff, but there wasn't a lot of them, but the ones that were there were done very well. I really liked the journey aspects of it. I loved Myrad like slowly coming into herself, slowly becoming who she is, like out of slavery, and kind of relearning who she is as like a free woman. She's about 16 years old in this. There was also a moment in this book where she got her period for the first time. Like as soon as she started to eat better and was taken care of, she got her first period, and I just love that that was like in the book. And like a little bit while later, like a month later or so, she gets her period again. So like it's like a regular thing that she gets her period. She has a little elixir that she can drink that's almost like a painkiller. She has her rag that she uses for pads, and I just really love that that was in there, because you don't see that a lot in high fantasy. I also really love that the magic in this world is very deeply connected to nature and animals, and part of the magic that these bards have is that they can actually converse with the animals in the world. So they can talk to birds, they can talk to their horses, they can like forge these really lovely relationships with their horses and their dogs and stuff, because they can talk to them properly. And I just really love that, and that kind of, for Myrad, that kind of came near the end of the book, and I think we'll see more of that in the future books, but I just really like that part of it. So yeah, so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. As I said, I just enjoyed the book overall, and I'm looking forward to reading the next book in the series. And then the last book I read so far this month is a book that, to be quite honest, I didn't know whether I wanted to put it into like my reading, like my Goodreads reading challenge, or if I wanted to mark it read on Goodreads, or if I wanted to talk about the fact that I had read it, because I felt a little bit embarrassed by the fact that I had read it and that I quite enjoyed it. And then I said, why am I feeling embarrassed about a book that I'm reading? Like, books are mostly for entertainment. This is a book that completely entertained me. And I realised, like, in the same way that a lot of people watch, say, like types of like reality television, or, you know, that type of television that you don't really have to think about when you're watching it, you just watch it for pure entertainment and just to shut your mind off from other things for a while. This is the same way that I read these type of books, which are those kind of like trashy in the loosest sense of the word, like romance books. And this is why I ended up reading Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon, and this is kind of exactly what you would think of it looking at the cover. It is about a group of women who get abducted by these evil aliens. They end up crash landing on this other like alien planet, and they end up finding these big blue aliens who are like really attracted to them, and they end up having like a romantic and a very sexual relationship with. And like, that's really all it is. It's like under 200 pages. It was quite fun. Like, I actually, like, even like the romance and like the steamy bits aside, which were, you know, like fun to read, this is like one of the reasons why you read them, because you just kind of want something steamy, you want something a bit fun, and something that like you don't really have to think about, or to be quite like, you don't want something that even makes a lot of sense. Like, a lot of the things in this book are like nonsensical. Like, they don't, you know, you don't have to think about them too much, you don't want to think about them too much, you're just reading it for the fun of it. But apart from that, one of the things I actually liked about this book was the planet itself and the aliens themselves. I loved learning about how these aliens lived, and like how they're like, I guess, how they all worked together, how their community worked, like what they ate, how they lived, like just how their community like worked in tandem with each other. I just really loved finding out all those little bits and pieces around these creatures. And yes, I also quite enjoyed the romantic bits in it as well. And I actually kind of like that, like this series does continue with like different girls and you get like different romantic partnerships. I don't think I'd read them all together because I say they probably become quite samey if you've read a lot of them, but I think I will eventually go on and read the second book because I did actually enjoy this more than I thought I was going to. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars just for pure enjoyment. And yeah, I don't want to feel like, I want to just like reiterate that, like, yes, for a moment I was feeling like, oh, a bit embarrassed and ashamed that I would be reading these type of books that aren't like, you know, they're not like great works of fiction or great works of literary. They're not going to win any like big awards or whatever, but like they're just fun and they're just entertainment, and I shouldn't really feel embarrassed about that. So that is why, and if you also read those type of books as well, like, don't feel embarrassed about it. Like, we are all allowed have things like just to read for pure enjoyment, and that is definitely what this was for me. I very much enjoyed it and I will eventually read the next one. So that's everything I've read so far in April. Please let me know what you guys think, if you guys have read any of these books, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye!